Welcome to Straight from the Table for the BNBF Southern 2025. This was our first qualifier of the season and opened really quite well with a lot of quality throughout the classes. It was an unusual one because it's the first time we've had a classic competitor win the overall in the men's class, so that was quite unique. Alec, what did you think of Patrick Santi, our overall winner? Did you have him as the winner? Was it who you saw as the winner?
It actually wasn't who I had. I actually went for the lightweight Chris Barefoot, but I was very close between the two. I think Patrick had a nice balance in terms of condition, size, posed well. So, although it wasn't clear cut, I think definitely a worthy winner and a high quality athlete.
Yeah, it was an unusual one where a lot of the judges had differing opinions, but that just shows the quality of the lineup at the end of the show. So well done to all our champions as always. That was great. So well done, Patrick, who also won our best wheels, which is a very coveted trophy. Our overall female, Ali Warner, she won the athletic and bodybuilding class and probably had the most condition and most shape and most balance of all the ladies of the day. I would say that was a fair call, and it was straight across the board with her for the judges. They gave her the first place. What did you think about Ali?
Yeah, that was an easy one. I thought Ali was great. Obviously competed with the BNBF before. Definite improvements, much more thickness top to toe, same level of condition, posed beautifully, very worthy winner. Lovely set of abs, nice in the back. Yes, definite standout.
And I don't think she'll mind me saying it's, again, a woman in her 50s winning the overall. It just goes to show there's no reason for any of us to give up. So well done, Ali, on that one. But we started our show with our Masters class, and it was a good lineup. Our winner of the Masters class, Maxwell Hurd, he competed with us a long time ago and had a long time away and came back as a master. A nice balanced physique. What did you think of the Masters class, Alec?
Yeah, excellent, to be honest with you. Great quality throughout. Quick mention, Dave Driscoll in fourth place, being an over 70. Dave was, beg your pardon. So in terms of, class ahead there. So Masters-wise, I think, pretty tight between the three. So Maxwell took first, from Mark in second and Tyrone in third. So Max, I think, really nice balance, nice level of condition, strong in the symmetry round, versus Mark, who had more muscle, probably slightly tighter condition, but just didn't quite have Max's probably posing ability or his balance as well. Truth be told, I was actually tight between both of them. I had the tie going into the night show. His personal perspective, I thought I was going to go with Mark just because, he had a lot of thickness and a lot of great condition. But I think in the end, I just went with Max just because he had more balance. But I was really close between that. So I think come the British final, that could turn a different way. And then Tyrone in three, we've seen Tyrone a lot, ton of muscle, lovely physique, just needs more condition. And I think we say the same thing every year. If Tyrone was granite, then I think he'd probably be winning the class, to be honest with you. I don't know if you saw it different, Vic, or...
No, I would agree. I had actually put notes on. I mean, I wasn't judging, but I had put notes during the day and was taking note as I was emceeing. And I had wrote Maxwell the most balanced, Mark very, very close, Tyrone condition, and Anis, again, another good master. Anis was somebody that actually I probably looked at and could have given a Britain invite, and I would say that in hindsight, he was very, very close with Tyrone, and Tyrone got one, so I may reach out to him and give him a Britain invite in retrospect because of looking at the scores and looking at the how he looked on the day. So that may be a retrospect, and I'll get in touch with Anis in time for that. But next up was our over 50s. Again, another strong class with Darren Loxton taking the win. I'm guessing you probably had Darren the winner because it was across the board.
Yeah, very much so. Darren took first from Paul Elliott in second, and then Adrian Holder-Mallet in third. So Darren again, competed with the BNBF a lot. I think previously a lightweight competitor, but still obviously stepping into the over 50s, lovely balance of Darren's physique, some really strong body parts, nice level of condition. If we're being picky, probably needs to be harder for the final, I'd suggest, but came in with a great level of fullness. Evening routine was flawless as always, so very polished. The only thing I'd say to Darren is just, a little bit more condition for the final, and hopefully you can hold that fullness as well, because that looked excellent. Paul Elliott, a lot of chunk to Paul's physique. Just needs more condition. That's the only thing. But certainly tons better from last year. Big improvements. Still for me, he needs another coat of tan. I don't know if you thought the same.
It was darker, but yeah,
Yeah, still one
you
more.
could probably push it a little bit more.
We're getting there. Maybe one more coat. We'll get there. But yeah, Paul looked great. And then Adrian in third. Nice level of condition. Obviously, a slightly taller gentleman, so just needed a bit more size to be challenging against Darren.
He was up against it with two shorter guys. It can be kind of hard unless you've got a lot of muscle as a tall person.
Yeah.
But I would agree with you. Darren, I loved the fullness you had. So even though we're saying more condition, it's get that happy balance because your pecs were fuller, everything was fuller, and you just had a more. It gave you a little bit more shape. And Byron, well done getting on stage. I mean, I know this was a first for you, and doing your first show in your over 50s is always a bit daunting. And hopefully you'll go away and learn from it and come back and have another go because you did seem to enjoy it. So well done. Our over 60s. Now, the over 60s was mind blowing, and I did actually mention that when I was emceeing. To have a lineup of over 60s that looked as good as that was quite incredible. I mean, your top three were brilliant. I mean, all had different qualities. All have got potential to change things around with a little bit of work here and there. But Gary was the one that came out on top this time, and there was no getting away from the amount of muscle that guy has in his upper body. Yeah,
100%. I think, Davey Hander, the head judge, said, that's the best over 60s class he's ever seen. And I think echo that, it was phenomenal. So we helped to be our Gary Arbon, our champion, in first, who took the win from Rodney in second, and then Lazaro Almenares coming up in third place. So I think Gary just, probably again, if we're being picky, but he's a bit more, weight into his legs, but upper body, especially, pecs and arms are just unbelievable. Just so. Sometimes
I felt like Gary wasn't posing his legs on stage. He was focusing. We know his strength's his upper body, and he seemed to be focusing a lot on that and forgetting about his legs. And Lazaro, I think, is a bit guilty of that as well. Lazaro's probably got the most aesthetic looking upper body of the three, but he, again, didn't pose his legs. He focuses on that upper body strength and doesn't tighten his legs. And I don't think they were necessarily small compared to his upper body. He just didn't use them well enough. And Robert was probably the most balanced, but just needs to come in harder.
Yeah, spot on. Agree with that. I think, just for me, again, Robert, quads from the front, very impressive. Very strong on the symmetry round. Just glutes and hams were soft, if we've been calling a spade, and they just needed to come up. I think, interestingly, if Robert's glutes and hams were an awful lot harder, I think he could have really pushed Gary, because I think his quads in the front were super sharp and he got a lovely shape. So I think, a bit more condition from Robert, that could be difficult for Gary come the Britain. And then, Lazaro again, potentially, maybe the most balanced actually out of the three. But I think, again, posing, especially in his lower half, as you said, Vic, just needs a little bit more. But phenomenal. And then Dave Driscoll, if we finally talk about Dave, in fourth place, over 70. Dave was excellent condition as always, very impressive. Didn't look out of place in the slightest in the lineup. And was top draw. So again, look forward to seeing Dave at the Britain in the over 70s.
Yeah, well done to them all. As I say, it was lovely to have such a good lineup, and as we always do with the over 60s, every one of them gets invited to Britain because we're honoured to have them on our stage. So thanks, guys, for turning up, and so many of you turn up in such good shape. So well done. But yeah, from that we went on to our Miss Athletic class, and there was only two in this class, and our overall winner won this as well as the bodybuilding. And I think we've kind of said she had what was asked for. I mean, you're asked for condition, and she brought us condition. She had condition through her shoulders, through her arms, her abs. Her legs had detail in her quads. Even her glutes and hams were in. There was detail there. So she was a worthy winner with that class. Hayley just needs more condition. She really didn't. For a condition class, she didn't have enough condition to compete with Ali. So Hayley, you need to come back harder for the Britain if you're going to bring it back. So well done, girls. And then moved on to our men's athletic, which was interesting because they were very, very similar in lots of ways. Their structures were quite similar. And I think it was just really, again, a condition, slightly more condition from Glucomo compared to Luca. But other than that, there wasn't a lot to split them. They both actually were good examples of what the athletic class is, and posed well as athletic competitors. So just look at being even harder, guys, for the final. Both of you could be harder, but Luca especially more so. But well done. I don't know if you've got anything to say about that.
No, that's perfect. Yep, spot on.
Perfect. And then Masters figure. Masters figure was another mash-up on the judges' sheets where a lot of the judges had differing opinions. But the winner ended up being Becky Darling Johnston, who was probably the most conditioned in the class. Now, that's not normally what we look for in figure. However, if there's nobody else that's stand out, then we still have to give credit where credit's due. And I would say that what Becky did very, very well was she posed herself into shape that she didn't actually have. So she took advantage of everything she could do. Her T-walk was good. She made herself look more shapely than she actually was. So well done on that, Becky. Well done on the condition you brought, and well done on your win in the class. Second was Jacqueline Casimiro Pearson. This was her first time on stage. Again, as a 50-year-old lady, it was her first time on stage. So she... It takes balls to come on and do that as a 50-year-old, and she didn't let herself down. She was in good enough condition. Needs to be harder again for the final. Had a nice shape. Her nerves let her down a little bit, I would say. She could, if she was a little bit more confident, which I'm hoping she will be next time out, she could improve from that. She just needs to be a little bit more confident. And Jo Grayley was probably the most figure-like out the top three, but just not hard enough. So again, Jo, a little bit more condition for the final, and that'll make a difference. And the same, Sandra, you need to be harder again, and so does Villia. The two of you need to be harder. But well done, girls. We only had one in our actual figure class as well, who was Ali Williams. She actually came on with the Masters figure, although she wasn't judged with them. She was judged separately, and obviously therefore won the class and got invited to the Britain. But Ali, you do need to come in a lot harder for the finals. You've got a nice balance, a nice stage presence, nice hair and nice makeup, which I'm only saying because I saw you getting it done early in the morning. But well done. Just think about bringing a lot more conditioning for the next time out for the finals. Well done. Okay. So next up was our teens and juniors, and the teens was won by Owen Wanstall. Very impressive teen. Alec, what do you think?
Yeah, excellent. Ton of muscle. To be honest with you, obviously came out. Could have been a junior of the amount of muscle Owen had. Very balanced. Great symmetry. Quads especially, a lot of thickness. Again, if we're being picky, as we always tend to be, because we want the best out of the guys and girls, a little bit more condition for the final.
Agreed.
It's the only thing. But as a younger gentleman, very impressive physique. And I think even had a vote in the overall.
He did, he did.
Which is very impressive. So yeah, big props there. Zach in 2, slightly on the taller side. Condition was excellent. So I think, no knock there, going towards the Britain, obviously in time, just needs to fill out his frame, but no weaknesses at all. I thought, nicely balanced, so, ton of potential. So, great to see there. And then, Misha, in third, just condition, obviously a, absolute lump of a young man, a lot of thickness, but needs an awful lot more condition to be challenging. The Britain and Misha, I know you came and chatted to me at the end for feedback, which was great to see. And I know obviously we discussed, just to bring it in sharper for the final, which you promised me that you would do. So I hope you do, and I look forward to seeing you on stage in Perth in September.
Yeah, it was interesting, Owen, actually getting a vote in the overall, because I think that if you were actually analysing who had one of the best potentials on the day, Owen stood out in that sometimes people are made to be bodybuilders, and he's one of these frames and physiques that you can see the muscle, you can see the shape, that he's blessed and has potential, which doesn't mean you'll make it, but it means that it's all there for you to play for, Owen, so push hard for that one. Well done. Our junior was Joseph Howe as well. Joseph was in good condition, lacked a little bit posing finesse, and he wore trunks that would be more fitting for classic, which is not what we expect for that class, which also hid his shape a little bit, so it made him, you couldn't really see how much shape he actually had, and he was very, very pale. So but not a bad junior, just needs sort of little things out. He's posing his tan and his trunks, which are easier to actually fix than your physique. So those are your fixes for the final, Joseph. So hopefully we'll see you there looking a little bit more tanned and with some better posing. Well done though. Next up was the novice class. And again, it was, the top 3 in the novice were very, very good. And the other 2 were actually just a bit raw. But the winner in that class was Tom Millington, who I thought was very, very balanced, fabulous tan. After saying that Joseph's wasn't good, it's fabulous tan. And just won it from Tom Linsford Kit. What did you think about those ones then? Or Lindsay Kit, sorry.
Yeah, no, Tom was, Tom taking the win there. So Tom from Tom, 2 Toms. So Tom Millington, again, very balanced, nice level of condition, posed very well, ticked a lot of boxes. I was actually tight between Tom Millington and Tom Wesley Kidd. Tom Wesley Kidd.
Livsley.
So Livsley, beg your pardon. A lot of thickness. I thought great shape, just lacked, a little bit of condition. And that was probably the only thing. Tan was a little bit light if we're being picky. But interestingly, I think if Tom Livesey Kidd had been a little bit harder, that could have actually potentially gone a different way. So I think all to play for come the Britons. So, both very, very strong competitors. And I said I was actually close between both of them. So, and then Josh Dandy in 3, again, slightly on the taller side, nice level of condition, very strong novice, just needs a bit more of everything, going forward, but certainly, a strong package.
Yeah, Josh looked young in the class. I think when I'd written down a few notes, and my comment with him was he had lovely structure, but just looked young compared to the others, like he needed a bit more maturity. Yeah. And the other 2, bit like you said, Tom Millington just had a little bit more balance. Tom Livesley Kidd, very muscular and very strong legs. Yeah. The other 2, Philip Walcott, I think it was his first time on stage, has a nice shape, very slightly narrow, needs to put a little bit more size on because he's tall. And Kai Yen Wong needs to come in harder to get any sort of shape. He's a little bit thick through the waist, so you need to get his condition really tight to really be competitive in that class. But well done again. Some nice competitors in that class. And our next class was a classic bodybuilding, where our overall winner came from Patrick Asante, and he beat, and I never can get this name right, Ordinato Omalayo, and I think he gets called Mick. Or Mike.
We're going for Mike, I think, yeah.
So we'll call him that for just now. But that was very close. I mean, I think it was a split decision. I don't think it was, as straightforward as winning it all. Patrick had slightly better condition, which is not necessarily what we're looking for in classic. Ordinato, to me, had slightly better shape, which to me, I thought it would have gone the other way, but Patrick's condition obviously just swayed the judges. I felt he crunched an awful lot when he was posing for a classic class and should have opened up a little bit more, which threw me a little bit. But as I say, I wasn't judging, so I won't knock any of my judges' decisions. But it was very, very close, and 2 very strong competitors going forward onto the British finals. Followed by David Whitten, who to me probably stood out as one of the most classic-looking classic competitors, and posed brilliantly as a classic competitor. Yeah. But condition, I think you said, was...
Big thing, yeah, 100%. Just needs, just too soft for me. Yeah.
Did you have anything to say about any other competitors?
No, I think, again, just to echo that, I actually had, I will call him Michael. I actually had Michael, the winner for me. It was very close between Patrick and Michael, but I did have Michael. I just felt that Michael had a little bit more size, just top to toe, apart from potentially the quads. And I think he just had, for me, more width, more taper than Patrick. But certainly when Patrick first came out, because his quads were so strong and his condition from the front across his abs and quads, I think he was very, very flashy, and that was very eye-catching. But I felt, on balance, Michael was potentially a little bit stronger, but we're picking hairs here.
Yeah.
And they were both
I would like
excellent.
to see Patrick not trying to show striated glutes, because I don't think it's important in that class. And I think maybe if he didn't do that, he would maybe look more classic and more shapely, because he sometimes hid his shape with trying to show condition, which isn't. His condition was there. He didn't need to do that. So I think if he posed slightly more open and showed his shape, he maybe would be stronger again. But we'll see come the finals. Next up was the women's bodybuilding, and Ali Warner took that, and we've talked about Ali. She on the day had, as I say, the best shoulders, best arms, best abs, best legs of all the women in the show. So justifiably won the women's bodybuilding class from Jade Hart. Now, Jade had really strong shoulders and arms and very, very strong triceps, which is quite unusual in a woman.
Striated triceps. I could take my eyes off them. It's unbelievable, but yeah.
But didn't quite have the condition to beat Ali. So Jade, bring condition in for the finals, and let's see the rest of you as straight as your triceps, and we could have some different results going forward. But well done. And Sally Fairbrass was the third in that class, and I just think she lacked a little bit muscle at this stage to be competitive with the other two. But she seemed to have a great time on stage, and there was a lot of camaraderie between the girls in that class, which was lovely to see. So well done, all three of you. And then was our men's open class. Now we split that into two this time because when we were weighing them in, as we do in the BNBF, there was 4 of them that were 72 and under, and 3 of them that were over 80. So there really actually wasn't a middleweight class there. There was not enough to create a middleweight class, even for just the sake of having a middleweight class. So we split it into lightweight and heavyweight, and I think that worked out. When we saw it on stage, it was perfectly worked out. But winning the lightweight class, we had Chris Barefoot, followed by David Rodlosso from Italy, and then Tom Scott was third, and Michael Bloom was fourth. It was a good lineup of lightweights, to be honest. What do you think?
Yeah, great. Very strong class. I mean, I probably started at the bottom. I think, Michael Bloom, I think we saw Michael at the Southern potentially 2 seasons ago. I thought, great improvements. Lovely shape, nice degree of muscle. Unfortunately, Michael just ran into a really tough class on the day. Just needed more condition. But, I think that could come up for the final. But I thought, Michael looked great. So congrats, Michael, on some great improvements. Tom Scott in third, the most heavily muscled of the competitors. At night, not quite sure what you did. I think you probably just whacked some carbs in because you looked night and day different.
And his tan was darker.
And your tan was darker, yeah. Ton of muscle, very, very thickly muscle top to toe. Just needed more condition. That was probably the only thing. I think if your condition was just tighter again, we'd probably be looking at a different result there. So I think, very impressive lightweight. And then, but because your condition wasn't quite up to the par of David and Chris, I think that's obviously why, Tom wound up in third. And then between Chris and David, I believe, split decision. I personally went with Chris. I think for me, both very well balanced. In the end, conditioning was very comparable. Chris from the back, for me, the 2 back poses. Chris was, for me, lights out. Just had a lot of thickness across his back and his hamstrings that David didn't. I think you made a comment before we came on, Vic, that potentially David was crunching down into his back pose to show his condition, which then kind of
a bit of scared dog going on.
Indeed, yeah, which then didn't obviously accentuate, his shape and potentially made him look a little bit longer than potentially he was. Whereas Chris, pushed his glutes out, really opened his back up. And I think, for me, that was the decider, because apart from that, they were both very equal. David probably stronger from the side, maybe a mixed bag from the front. But then for me, Chris was just more thick from the back. Yeah,
I think the scared dog would have done it for me. But Chris just had more shape from the back, and David was too busy focusing on trying to show glutes, where if he just opened up his back and shown shape, I think he would have been more competitive. Yeah. His tan was brilliant as well.
Excellent.
Really, really nice tan, really nice presentation, and actually just a really nice class. So well
Great
done,
class.
guys.
Yeah, really strong.
Yeah. And the last class we had was our heavyweight class, which was won by Scott Jesard from George Ricketts and Bradley Ujugo. Scott probably had the cleanest lines on the day, just a little bit more cleanly conditioned. And George, again, another one that when I watched him, he focused that much on crunching down that he made himself look thick-waisted and square. We actually had a lot of muscle, and if he'd actually opened up and lifted up, he could have probably looked bigger than again. But 2 strong competitors, which could definitely go a different way come final time if George just has a look at his posing, looks at his photographs and sees how he could adjust that. But he did have a lot of muscle, and Bradley just didn't have the condition this time to be competitive. What were your thoughts on that one, Alec?
Yeah, spot on. I will say I thought George was an awful lot better at night. I thought an awful lot fuller. I think he was much more comparable at night. So again, potentially one for prejudge George in terms of to look at. And then yes, Scott, as you say, well put, clean lines. I think for the Britain, obviously Scott's on the slighter side of the heavyweights.
Yeah.
So you may run into some really thickly muscled gentlemen come the Britain. So I think for Scott, he does his I think Scott's thing is, for a taller guy, he does have lovely taper, lovely lines.
Yeah.
So I think we probably need a little bit more condition come the Britain just to accentuate that, because that will be Scott's strength. And obviously, we look forward to seeing Scott and George in Perth in September at the British final.
Yep. So that runs down our Southern, an enjoyable show. It was sponsored by Apex Formulas, which we really, really appreciate. They were very generous in providing prizes for the winners and goodies for every single competitor. So that was really, really appreciated. We also had Studio One and Mark Palfrey sponsored a class, and TFD Health and Fitness. So our sponsors are always really appreciated. They help us run the shows, and we're looking for more sponsors for our up and coming shows. But get in touch if you're interested. We'll have something up and about that on Instagram shortly. But thanks, Alec, for taking time to do that. We'll look forward to seeing everybody again very soon at the Midlands, and Straight from the Table after the Midlands will be out after the show. Thank you everyone for listening. Bye bye.